Hi, scholars. I know it's a little bit different seeing my face in the math videos, especially for people in Larson. You haven't seen me at all since we've been doing virtual learning. But I just wanted to show my face because I miss you all a lot, and I wish that I could see all of you all's faces. But at least you can see my face for now, and just know that I really love and miss each of you all. Switching back over to math. So you all just completed your topic B assessment on fractions. I have not seen that data yet, but I am very excited to see how well you all have done. So, starting off with lesson 10, you have an application problem. Today, I want you to work on your application problem independently. We are getting towards the end of our third grade year. Can't believe it went by so fast. And we have to prepare for fourth grade where you're working a lot more independent. So, as I have mentioned in my previous videos, I will be kind of backing off a little bit and letting you all show what you know more so than me guiding through talking. So, although I will explain the skill you're supposed to learn in math today, you'll be doing more work trying to do more figuring out on your own. Okay, so don't be afraid. It's a little bit more challenging, but I'm very confident that you can do it. Okay, so first, your application problem says Sarah makes soup. She divides each batch equally into thirds to give away. So, my thing is to always stop after you read the first sentence or two in a word problem. Make sure that you draw it out so you do not get confused. So she made soup. Let's draw a pot of soup. And she divided each batch equally into thirds to give away. So we know that to make our thirds in our circle, we just draw like a Y in the middle. And so each of these is 1/3. Okay, 1/3 because there are three pieces. There are three sections, and each section counts for 1/3. It says each family that she makes soup for gets 1/3 of a batch. So this will go to a family. This will go to a family. This will go to a family. Each third goes to a family. Sarah needs to make enough soup for 5 families, so we know that this is not quite enough. How much soup does Sarah give away? Write your answer in terms of batches. So here you have to figure out how many batches she needs to make to feed 5 families because each family gets a third. And then you need to write your answer in the term of batches. So how many batches does she need to make? Each batch is an entire circle. Okay, so you may have a whole number. We know that she's going to use one batch for sure. So we know she's going to use one whole, but that's not enough for all of her family. So you have to figure out what fraction goes along with that whole to represent how much or how many batches she had to make or how many thirds she had to give away to each family. And then there's an extension at the bottom that says what fraction will be left over for Sarah. So after Sarah makes all of these batches of soup and gives thirds to families, how much is left over for her to enjoy? So there are 2 answers that you should have for this problem. Okay, so take your time, work hard. I'm very confident that you can answer it. I cannot wait to see you all's package to see how you did. So now we are moving into lesson 10. If you have not completed your application problem, please go ahead and pause your video because I'm about to go into lesson 10 and you won't be able to work on your application problem while listening to me at the same time. So if you're not done with your application problem, go ahead and complete that. And then you can replay the video or start the video to catch up on lesson 10. So with lesson 10, we have an objective that I want to break down because now that you all understand fractions, we're going to be doing different, almost like different activities with fractions. And so today we're going into comparing. So we're looking at the similarities and differences between the different fractions that we're working with. So your objective is to compare unit fractions by reasoning about their size using fraction strips. So when I first read this standard, I was like, this is a lot of words. So I'm going to break this down to make sure that you understand exactly what we're doing. Okay, sometimes you'll be in class and you'll have these objectives, and it's like I understand some of those words, but I don't understand what I'm supposed to do. You should always be able to understand. If you can understand the objective, you know the skill you should have learned at the end of that class. So let's break it down so you all know what you are supposed to learn. So it says compare unit fractions. compare unit fractions. We know what unit fractions are. Unit fractions are like 1/2, 1/3, 1/4, 2/3. Okay, those are unit fractions. We have been working with those over the past couple of weeks. Now it's saying compare unit fractions. So we're comparing. Remember, comparing is to find the similarities between different objects. Okay, you're looking at what's the same and what's different. For an example, I have two markers here. Both of them are black. I'm comparing, I'm finding the similarities. Both of them can be written on paper. Only one can be used to write on the board. Only one is permanent. Okay, so you see how I'm comparing. So I'm looking at what's the same and what's different between these two objects. So you're going to do the same thing with fractions. Okay, you're just looking at what's the same, what's different. Is anything the same? Is anything different? Okay, so that's comparing fractions. By reasoning, what does it mean to reason? Miss Brina has you. Reasoning. To reason means to make sense out of something. Okay, if you've ever heard of the term common sense, like you're falling back on your reasoning, like why is 1/2 bigger than 1/3, or is it smaller? And you're going to have to tell why you think that. Okay, and you'll understand that later when we get into the lesson. And so we're comparing unit fractions by reasoning using what we see or things that we know about their size by using fraction strips. So all in all, what we're doing is we are looking at different fractions on fraction strips, and we're focused on their size. And after we're comparing them, we're like, okay, this one is bigger than the other, and you're going to give a reason. How do you know that? So we're comparing unit fractions by using fraction strips, and our main focus is to compare their size. We're looking at the size, okay? Maybe sound a little tricky still, but once we get to work, you'll understand. So I'm going to erase my board. I like recording like this. What do y'all think? I feel like I'm talking to you all directly. All right, so let's turn to our first page. I am going to post the page here on the board. And it may be a little bit difficult to see, but if you're following along on your worksheet, you'll pretty much understand what I'm doing. So it says, number 1, each fraction strip is one whole. All the fraction strips are equal in length. So all the fraction strips are the same. Color one fractional unit in each strip, then answer the questions below. So we're coloring one unit, one section in each fraction strip. So this first one is 1/2. So I want to show 1/2. And halves, that means 2. So I'm going to color in one of them. Okay. Next, 1/4. Coloring in just one. Now you all go ahead and color in one unit in each of these fraction strips. Only one unit. Okay. So we're done with number 1. That was pretty easy. Now, number 2 is where things get a little bit tricky, and I want to explain something to you before we get started. So I'm pretty sure that you all have seen the alligator mouth when you start talking about greater than, less than, or equal to. For an example, if I have the numbers 4 and 8, and I have to put here either 4 is equal to 8, meaning 4 and 8 are the same. 4 is greater than 8, meaning 4 is a bigger number than 8. Or 4 is less than 8, meaning it's less than. It's not as big as 8. Okay? So we all know that 4 is a smaller number than 8. So 4 is less than 8. To write that, you're going to use what we call an alligator mouth. Your alligator mouth is like that, like a sideways V almost. Okay? So with your alligator mouth, and when you're doing greater than or less than, You always want the mouth to be open to the larger number. Think about it like this. Alligators love to eat big things. Alligators don't want to eat little insects or little plants. They want big things, like big animals for them to eat. So when you think about greater than, less than, think about, oh, my alligator is hungry. They want the bigger number. Okay? So for an example, with 4 and 8, I will put my alligator mouth towards the 8 because my alligator wants the bigger number. So how you will read this is 4 is less than, because the alligator turned its back to the 4. It doesn't want that 4. 4 is less than 8. Let's try another one. Which way is my alligator mouth going to face? Remember, it wants the big meal. It doesn't want a little skimpy meal. It wants a big meal. That's right. It's going to eat the 3. It wants the 3. So you read this as 3 is greater than 1. Okay. Here, the alligator has its back towards the first number, so 4 is less than 8. Here, it has its mouth open towards the larger or the first number, so its 3 is greater than 1. Okay. And of course, if you had a problem where, let's say you had 2 and another 2, you will put 2 is equal to 2 because that's the same. Okay. If it's the same, the alligator doesn't want it, so you don't need to draw alligator mouth. Okay. So now that we understand greater than, less than, let's complete number 2. Number 2 says circle less than or greater than. Whisper the complete sentence. So here we have 1/2 is, you're either going to circle less than or greater than 1/4. You're not using your alligator mouth yet. 1/2 is less than or greater than 1/4. Well, let's look at our picture at the top. Here I see 1/2. It takes up half of the entire fraction strip. 1/4 is not, it looks a little bit less than to me. It's not as much. Okay, now if there were 2/4 filled in, it would be the same as 1/2, but it's only 1. So 1/2, is it greater than or less than 1/4? 1/2 is greater than 1/4, so you are going to circle that greater than. So let's make sure we follow the entire set of instructions, and it says whisper the complete sentence. So the complete sentence will say 1/2 is greater than 1/4. Okay. Next, let's do B together. This will be our last one together. Actually, no, it won't. I'm going to do another one with you all. So with B, it says 1/6, which is the one here at the bottom, is greater than or less than 1/2. Look at the size of 1/6, and let's look at the size of 1/2. Which one is 1/6 greater than or less than 1/2? Go ahead and circle it and whisper it back to me. I'm ready. I'm listening. Great job. 1/6 is less than 1/2. Give yourselves a pat on the back. Great job, scholars. All right. Next, now you're going to complete C, D, E, F, and G on your own. You can definitely use the fraction strips that we completed here in number 1 to help you understand the difference in size. Okay. I want us to look at H. H is a little bit different. It says 9/8 is less than or greater than 2 halves. Now that one is a little bit tricky because we don't have a picture of 9/8. So I'm going to write it out here. So if I have 8, and then I have halves. So this one is a little bit tricky because you have, if I split this into eighths, I have a little bit, it says 9/8. So if this is split into eighths, that means each of these plus one more, 9/8. Here it has 2 halves, which is 1. Which one do you think is larger? I'm going to give you a couple of seconds, to figure out which one you believe it is. Which one is larger? We have 30 seconds. I'm about to set my timer. Go. Okay, time's up. So which one do you think is greater? Do you think 9/8 is great? 9/8 is eighths is greater than 2 halves, or do you think 2 halves is greater than 9/8? I want you to whisper it to me. You got it correct. 9/8 is greater than 2 halves, and let me explain to you why. 9/8 is greater than 2 halves because the eighths have more. If you write a fraction out, 9/8, you have more on top than you have at the bottom. So that means you have a little bit extra. 2 halves, we know a half is 2. So that's the denominator, the number at the bottom. And 2/2, that just means 1 whole, which we have here. That's just 1 whole. 9/8 came with a little bit extra, so that is why it is greater than 2 halves. Okay. All right. Moving on to the next page. Before we move on, there's something that I want to bring to your attention. Let's go back to the first, number 1. So number 1, we have, I want us to look at the numbers 1, or the fractions 1/4. 1/8. We have 1/2, 1/3, and 1/6. Actually, I want to put these in order. We have 1/2, 1/3, 1/4, and let's do 1/6. We'll do those. So this is a fraction. Here's a different color. Fraction, fraction, fraction. So let's look at 1/2. 1/2 has the bigger chunk, or the biggest part colored in than any of these other fractions, right? Do you all see that 1/2 is larger than any of the rest of the fractions? 1/3 is a bigger part, or a bigger section than 1/4. 1/4 is a bigger section than 1/6. 1/6 is a bigger fraction than 1/8. 1/8 would be a bigger section than 1/10. So one thing that I want to bring to you all's attention is when the denominator is bigger, the parts get smaller. So let me break it down for you again. So out of all of these fractions, 1/2 has the biggest part. 2 is smaller than any of the other denominators for the fractions we have shaded in here. So I can look at the denominator in a number and determine which is bigger or which is greater. For an example, let's do 1/2 and 1/8. without even looking at a picture, without drawing it out, I know that 1/2 is greater than 1/8 because 1/2 means that this fraction strip is only cut into two pieces. Okay, that denominator tells you how many sections there are. Here for 1/2, it's only two parts. I want 1/2 of a pizza versus 1/8 of a pizza, which means that same fraction strip gets cut up into 8 sections. Then the sections are smaller. So if the number is bigger, the sections are smaller. So don't get tricked. If somebody says, hey, Cicely, do you want 1/8 of a pizza or 1/2 of a pizza? Cicely, you have to be smart and say, I want 1/2 of that pizza. Don't try to fool me, okay? 1/8 of a pizza is a very small piece. 1/10 of a piece of pizza is even smaller. So the thing I want you to remember is, if the larger the denominator is, the larger the number at the bottom, which is the denominator, the smaller the number, or the smaller the section is. Large denominator equals small section. Small denominator equals large section. So if you start out large, you go down to small. If you start out small, you go bigger. Okay, you get a bigger piece. I hope that makes sense to you all. If it doesn't, try to look up some things around comparing fractions. Okay, and that should give you some additional support. But as always, make sure that you reach out to me so that I can clarify it in the way that we are learning it. Okay, so now we can move on to the next page. It says Lily needs 1/3 of a cup of oil and 1/4 of a cup of water to make muffins. Will Lily use more oil or more water? Explain your answer using pictures, numbers, and words. Pictures, numbers, and words. So there should be 3 answers here for number 3. Okay, take your time. Use what I have just taught you about the denominator. If the denominator is bigger, that means that's a lesser amount or a smaller section. If the denominator is larger, that means it's more. Okay. Next, number 4. It says use the greater than, less than, or equal to compare. So you have it written out. You have, where's my board? So you have 1/3 and 1/5. Okay, and you're just using greater than, less than to see which one is larger. So it may help you if you actually write out the fraction in its unit form, meaning 1/3 and 1/5. And let's see if we can figure this one out. Let's look at the denominators. Remember, the bigger the denominator, the smaller the section. We want to know which one is greater. So we're looking for the smaller denominator, which is here at 1/3. So 1/3 is larger or greater than 1/5. So you'll do that for each of these here for number 4. They also try to trick you when you get down to G. G and, just G. It has, this one is tricky, y'all. It's an entire sentence of fractions. Okay, so you have 1/8. Then you have your circle. Then you have 1/8. Then you have your circle. Then you have 1/3. And then you have 2 halves. Then you have 1 whole. Okay, so what you're doing is you're going to have to continue to compare all of the fractions. So I will help you in the beginning of this one because it's a little bit tricky if you haven't experienced doing this before. So for an example, you have 1/8 and 1/8. Those are both equal. Neither of those are greater than or less than the other. So you're going to put an equal sign in the middle. Now you're going to move over. You have 1/8 and 1/6. Which one is larger? Or which one is greater? 1/6 is greater than 1/8 because 6 is smaller than 8. And then you're just going to continue on. Next, you will compare 1/6 and 1/3. So you just continue. It's a long sentence of comparing fractions, okay? So give that a try. If it's a little bit confusing, that's okay. Just give it a try. I'm expecting to see everyone at least try on the extension here. And then number 5, you have a word problem. Your friend Eric says that 1/6 is greater than 1/5 because 6 is greater than 5. That is so tricky. Okay, remember, if the number is larger, it's a smaller section. If the number is small, it's a larger, let me say that again. If the denominator is large, that's a smaller section. If the denominator is small, it's a larger section. So read number 5 carefully. It's a tricky question, but I'm very confident that if you understand what I have talked about before, you'll knock number 5 out of the park. Okay, it's not a crazy question. Okay, and last but not least, you have your exit ticket. Your exit ticket says each fraction strip is 1 whole, just like we did in the beginning of our page. All of the fraction strips are equal in length. Color 1 fractional unit in each strip. Then circle the largest fraction and draw a star next to the smallest fraction, okay? Make sure you read those directions carefully. You have multiple things that you have to do for that one question. And then you have, for number 2, use greater than or less than to compare. That's what you're doing this entire lesson. So your exit ticket is directly aligned or just like the problems that I have done here for you, okay? So I'm very confident that you all will get it. I appreciate you all continuing to learn. I know it's difficult teaching yourself sometimes, but you all got it and you're doing an amazing job. I will see you back again for lesson 11.